Lord be with you. This is another poem. It's a poem I wrote myself about 5 or 6 years ago because it's very apropos the topic of the homily for today. I called it A Starring Role. I huffed and I puffed, dragging myself from rock to craggy rock until I reached the summit and found the sadhu in his cave. I've come all this way, O mountaintop guru. Can you tell me how to awaken? I can, he said. Do not agree to be a character in a play scripted by anybody else. Do not accept a role fashioned for you by religious bureaucrats, nor by politicians, nor by economists, nor yet by warmongering elites who would set brother against brother so as to profit from their shed blood. Don't even accept a role created for you by parents, by family, or by friends. You have a divine right to play the lead role, to be the main character in a play specifically created for you by Source itself. A character whose actions are governed by curiosity and compassion, by liberty and love, by wisdom and by wakefulness. And remember this too. Personal power is not about the ability to control others, but rather the ability to awaken the soul to Christ consciousness. Therefore, grant to others the right and the freedom to play the lead role in their dramas in which you are content to play a supporting role, even as they play supporting roles in the drama in which you are the star. This is the law of allowing, coupled with the law of creative awakening. Words inspired by God. How many thousands of actors do you think have played the role of Hamlet since Shakespeare wrote it? All the ways from high school kids to Hollywood stars. And everybody brings their own, even though it's the same script, it's exactly the same plot, everybody brings their own uniqueness to it. Different abilities to interpret what Shakespeare had in mind, different ways of playing the role, different accents in the role. They've all done it in their all unique fashion. Maybe hundreds of thousands of different people who played this role. But what would happen if you were to take just the cast of characters that appear in the drama? So like there's a king, there's a queen, there's the prince, which is Hamlet, there's Polonius, there's Ophelia, there's Horatio. Suppose you were to take just a group of actors and put them on stage and say, you're the king, you're the prince, you're Hamlet, you're Ophelia, you're Polonius. But you have no script and you have no plot. And you don't know anything about Shakespeare. Now, you're just given an initial scenario and you're given particular roles. You say, okay, get on with it. And so all these people are on stage and they're going to have to improvise. They're going to have totally ad lib and they're going to create their own unique version of Hamlet. Totally different. And whoever you put on the stage, you take a different group of actors, they'll come up with a totally different drama. Even though they've been assigned specific roles, and a specific opening scenario, but they'll play out a totally, radically different drama in time. So that's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to make 4 main points this morning. I'll talk firstly about psychodrama, and then secondly I'll talk about the global stage, and then thirdly about parallel lives, and then fourthly about reincarnation. So for those of you who haven't heard the word before, psychodrama is actually a very powerful technique that's used in psychology as a therapeutic modality. So the thing is, when you're dealing with a client in psychology, every one of us reports ourselves from a very, very subjective viewpoint. It's very, very hard to know how much is exaggeration, how much has been forgotten, how much is being made up. But when you see somebody in relationships, then you see another side of them. So there's this system in psychology where you take a group of clients who agree to this and you bring them together. Now, each person is dealing with their own particular issues, but they agree to go on stage. And you simply assign them roles and you don't give them any plot and any script and they have to get on with it. So I'll give you an example. Suppose I have 4 clients and they agree that they want to work together so as to kind of speed up their individual journeys. And I put them on stage and I say to one of them, you're the mother in this family. There's 4 people on stage. You're the mother in this family. and you're a CFO of a big multinational corporation. And you're going to be the father in this family, and you're an engineer. And you're going to be, let's say, you're going to be the son in this family, and you're a senior in high school, and you're really well loved by everybody, and you're the quarterback for the school. And you're the daughter in this family, you're a sophomore in high school, and you've just been busted for smoking pot on the playground. And the principal has rung the parents, and now you're together trying to sort out this situation. And the four of them are on stage. That's all. One is a father, one is a mother, one is a son, one is a daughter, and the daughter's been caught smoking pot. But there's no script, and there's no plot whatsoever. And you put them on stage, and what's going to happen? Somebody is going to say something to which the others are going to respond. And slowly by slowly, a plot will develop and dialogue will ensue. But given that they don't have a script to work from, and they don't have a plot guiding them, what happens is everybody actually acts from their own real personality. And so you begin to identify very quickly, what is each person's, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are their issues, and what's their communication style. And you let them on stage for half an hour, maybe an hour, and you get more information in that hour about these four people than you do from like a year of therapy on an individual basis. Right? It's called psychodrama. It's really, really powerful. Now, it becomes, for the person themselves, for each of the players, a really powerful self-diagnostic way of figuring, wow, I really tripped myself up here, or I really kind of shone here, or my communication really sucked in this particular thing. So you find out a whole lot about yourself, and the therapist does, and we do for each other. Now, in some senses, I think that that's what life is about. Life is this gigantic psychodrama. It's a lot more than 4 characters in it. And there isn't a plot, and there isn't a script. You were born into a family, you were born into a time in human history, into initial circumstances, and you were assigned a role. You were the son in the family, or the daughter, or you became the professional woman, or you became the basketball player, whatever it was. You were assigned particular roles, but there wasn't any plot, and there wasn't any script. And you played it out, and you responded to people in your lives, and they responded to you, and the whole human drama proceeded accordingly. But so here you are today, at this stage of this particular drama, having said what you said and done what you've done. So this is a huge, big psychodrama that we're involved in on planet Earth. That's my first point. So second point then, what if we take this to a global stage? What if you were able to see the entire trajectory of human history, as if it were spread out on a map or a tapestry or a mural before you? And you can look at every single human being who's ever lived. There are approximately 111 billion human beings who've lived on planet Earth since the advent of Homo sapiens sapiens 70,000 years ago. If you do the statistics on it, it comes out to about 111 billion people. And you see all these characters spread out through all of human history and all parts of the globe. And there's this huge tapestry that we've woven between all of us. It's this gigantic psychodrama that's been happening. Now suppose that you're in the bardo state. The bardo state means the place we reside in between incarnations. So we're disincarnated, and we're being debriefed by our mentors who prepared us for particular incarnations, and we're being prepared for the next incarnation. And we tend to travel in soul pods, cohort groups who move from drama to drama with each other. And each one of us has particular tasks we want to accomplish or virtues we want to develop. Because ultimately, every virtue is just love in a different guise. In one circumstance, love is going to look like compassion. In another circumstance, love is going to look like patience. In another circumstance, love is going to look like courage. In another circumstance, it's going to look like forgiveness. And all the vices are just different manifestations of fear. In one situation, fear is going to look like depression. In another situation, fear is going to look like anxiety. In another situation, fear is going to look like anger. In another situation, fear is going to look like unforgiveness. And so every single one of us, as we come in, we're going to choose some virtue that we want to work on. But since we're coming in as a group, we have to try to coordinate what the lessons are that we're trying to learn. And we've got these mentors who are advising us as individuals and as a soul group. And so, in my opinion, we reviewed this entire panorama of human history, past, present, and future, over all areas of the world. And the guide said to us, given the things you say you want to learn as individuals and as a group, what do you think about parachuting into the 8th century BCE as a nomadic tribe in North Africa? Or would you prefer to kind of parachute into an American family in the early 1800s, in the USA? What would best suit your purposes as a group? And we make the decision, and we come in, and we play out the part. But again, there's no script, and there's no plot. There are just assigned roles. We're in a particular era of human history, in a particular part of planet Earth, as a particular cohort group with particular lessons that we want to learn. And then we get on with it, and we play it out. And at the end of that time, we go back up and we review our situation. And so in some senses, we're part, it seems to me, of this extraordinary global agenda. And since I do not believe that time exists outside of incarnation, time is something we've had to make up because of these tiny little laptops, this 3-pound massive wetware that we carry between our ears. It's so small that we can't, process the entire gestalt. So we have to break it up into bite-sized pieces and process it sequentially, giving rise to the notion of time. But when we step out of incarnation, we step out of time. And so it's very possible that having reviewed, for instance, a lifetime as, an American family in the 1800s, in the US of A, at the end of that lifetime, we sit down with our mentors, we review our progress, and we set new goals for ourselves, and we're asked, well, where would you like to land now in the next one? Given what you've learned here, where would you like to land next? And we decide, what about 800 BCE in North Africa? So since time doesn't matter, you can land anywhere you want. And the circumstances are going to be completely different. The roles are going to be different. But it's the same cast of characters, and it's the same objective to continue to grow. Because basically we have two objectives in incarnation. On an individual basis, the objective is the evolution into enlightenment of the individual soul. Every one of us has an individual, unique trajectory. And then as a group, our function is to try to move planet Earth from Homo sapiens sapiens into what I've called Homo spiritualis, into the next phase of the evolution of the species, which is a place where there is no greed, and there is no warfare, and there is no selfishness. There's a sense of unity consciousness, rather, that's where the project is headed. So that's what the entire group is trying to do, and as individuals, we're trying for personal enlightenment. So that seems to me is like what it looks like on this global level. That's my second point. Now, to speed the process up, it seems to me that we play multiple roles in multiple eras, in multiple locations simultaneously. We're doing all of this at the same time because there is no time. There's only the eternal now, and the soul is infinite. It doesn't have to dedicate the entirety of its consciousness or ability, or energy to any one lifetime. It's prepared to divide it up among a whole bunch. So we're playing many, many roles simultaneously. And I think these bleed into each other occasionally in our nighttime dreams, or in deja vu experiences, or in coincidences, or in synchronicities. They bleed into each other temporarily, and we're kind of stumped for a bit. But it's the same soul guiding all of these. So what would be some metaphors to try to explain that? In 1964, at age 21, Bobby Fischer, who's arguably the greatest American chess player of all time, played 50 simultaneous games. There was a huge big square of tables in a big square, and he played 50 different opponents simultaneously. So he started at table 1, make his move, go to table 2, make his move, table 3, make his move, go right around, then come back and see how did you respond? I'm going to move accordingly. He goes around the whole thing, and of the 50 games, he won 47, he drew 2, and he lost 1. Now, the fact that this was table number 1, where he started, doesn't necessarily mean that this was the first game to finish. It depended on the skill set of the opponents. So maybe he finished game number 33 first, and that he finished game number 1 in the 16th position. It just depends on the quality of the opponents. So in some senses, we're all playing these simultaneous chess games in all these different lifetimes. And sometimes we seem to be doing really well, and sometimes we're not doing as well because it depends on the quality of the opponent, or the quality of the life circumstances, or the difficulty of the task we set ourselves. So in some senses, we're all playing simultaneous chess games against a whole range of different opponents with different skill sets in different parts of the world at different stages of human history, with different kinds of difficulties that we're embracing. And we're doing this in order to stretch ourselves. If we just choose very easy opponents, you could win all 50 games and you wouldn't learn anything. If you choose places where you're going to be really stretched, you're going to learn a lot more. So that might be one metaphor. Another metaphor might be this. I remember the first time somebody gave me a gift of a CD, a music CD, that I could play on my computer. I'd never seen one before. So I stick it into my computer, and an icon comes up on the screen. I click on the icon, and it shows me that this CD contains 13 songs. And I can see, what the name of the song is, who the singer is, and the duration of each song, 3 minutes and 15 seconds, 4 minutes and 13 seconds, whatever. So I click the play button, and over the next hour, I hear all these songs being played. It's very interesting. And then I see a second button that says shuffle. Interesting, what it says. So I hit the shuffle button, and now it plays the same 13 songs, but in a totally random fashion. So, wow, interesting. And then I see a third button, which allows me to choose the order in which I want them to be played. And so for the fun of it, I choose the prime numbers first. So I played 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. And then I played the even integers, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And then I played the leftovers, 1 and 9. And I played them in that fashion just to mess around with it. And I'm wondering at this stage, I've done it 3 different ways, what would happen if I could, I didn't figure out how to do it, I don't know if it can be done, if I could play all 13 tracks simultaneously. Would it be cacophony? Or would I be able to train my ear to distinguish between them? And would I be able to train my brain to accommodate all this? Or would I just run out of patience? I haven't been able to do it, obviously, but I wonder about that. Now, in some senses, that seems to me how we play our lifetimes. So we can come in here and we can hit play, and we allow somebody else to determine what the order of the music is going to be for us, and we listen and we respond whatever way we respond. We could do that. In some senses, we're plastic in somebody else's hand, dictating the flow of our lives. Or we could risk hitting the shuffle button and just see what happens for the fun of it. So it's mess around the organization a little bit and see what happens to our lifetimes. It's the second way of doing it. Or we could take control of it and we could order the sequence of the stuff we want to deal with and be really control freaks and take charge of the whole process. Some of us like to live our lives in that fashion. Or we could attempt to try to play all the tracks simultaneously. In other words, to try to grok all of the different lifetimes in which we are again engaging, and to learn from all those tracks simultaneously, and to really stretch the soul in very, very different ways. So that would be like the third point then, parallel processing, which leads me then to the whole notion of reincarnation. So as a young man, I read about reincarnation. I knew that it was a very important part of Hinduism. I knew that there was particular schools of Buddhism that believed in reincarnation. I know from my own Celtic stories that the Celtic mindset believed in reincarnation. I knew from studying other world mythologies that the Nordics had a form of reincarnation, that the shamans had a form of reincarnation. So I was aware of all these kind of philosophically or intellectually. And I even lived among peoples for 14 years in East Africa, the Kalenjin tribes, who believed in a form of reincarnation. I've shared this story with you before. So when a little baby was born, it got different names depending on the circumstances of the birth. But about 8 or 9 days after the baby was born, they would bring in an elder from the tribe who knew the ancestry of this little baby. And this person would start naming off the ancestors. And when the baby sneezed, they would believe, that's the ancestor that's come back. So the ancestors recycled within the family for the Kalenjin people. This was a given, total given. So I had evidence from, philosophy, from theology, from mythology, and now from living with these people. But it was very interesting to me, but it was unscientific, and therefore it was ungrounded and unfounded. So I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. It was cute, but fictitious. And then I came to the States in June of 1987 to begin ITP. And a few months into it, we did a session called perinatal training with a woman called Barbara Finn Dyson. And the objective of perinatal training was that a lot of psychologists believe that the circumstances of the birthing are very, very closely correlated with subsequent neurotic behavior. Yeah? And so the idea was that you would try to re-experience your own birth process. So she divided us up into pairs. So in the morning session, one person was the sitter and the other person was the experiencer. So she would create a kind of a channel of pillows representing the birth canal. And you're lying in there, and the room is completely dark, and there's particular kinds of music, and you're to try to see if you can recapture your own birth experience so as to help you to understand your own particular neurotic behavior subsequently. And there's a sitter there with you whose job is to make sure you don't get into trouble in any way. So in the morning, I'm the sitter, and somebody else is the experiencer. And there was 23 of us in the class. All of the others had an experience of their own birth, but I didn't. I was really expecting, when it comes to my turn, I'm going to, experience myself inside in Peg's belly, and I'm going to experience the birth canal and whatever. I was delivered by forceps, so I'm going to have some, experience of being dragged out in some way. What happened was totally different. I had no experience of being birthed. Rather, I had an experience of being a young Nepalese girl in the 18th century giving birth to her own firstborn child. And it was so real for me that literally for days afterwards, my stomach and my thighs ached from the experience. And that was a totally different hit on reincarnation. Here was a real experience rather than an intellectual knowledge about something. So I went on over the next 10 years. I'd been trained in hypnotherapy and self-hypnosis. So over the course of the next 10 years, I recovered memories from 11 different lifetimes in Ireland, in England, in Italy, in Germany, and in Russia. Through self-hypnosis, sometimes spontaneously in meditation. And on the last occasion, after or during a 4-hour-long regression with a very good friend of mine, Matt McKay, who's also a clinical psychologist, who led me through the process. So I start off in this last one as Seán, and he age regresses me back to my 40s, 20s, teenage years, childhood, birth circumstances, and then it takes a jump back to the previous lifetime. And I experienced myself sometime in the late 1944 as a young Russian soldier on the Eastern Front, helping to liberate a concentration camp and getting killed in the process. And leaving the battlefield, surrounded by hundreds of other soldiers in German uniforms and in Russian uniforms, and realizing, my God, I started laughing. This was a play that's just ended. And there's a whole bunch of discombobulated souls trying to figure out what just happened. I was walking around in uniform, and now I'm looking down at a battlefield at my own dead body. And trying to organize, the realization, guys, you're not Russian and you're not German. You're a soul who volunteered for a particular incarnation. And, it was a dream, and the dream has ended. What are you learning from it? So that was proved to be really, really powerful. So I then sat down over the next few months, and I tried to organize these 11 different lifetimes and figured out, can I see some kind of sequence or some kind of evolution to these? And firstly, I recorded them in their chronological order. But something didn't work about it, because I could see that, in some lifetimes I was doing really, really well, really compassionate, loving person. And then in another lifetime, I was not doing as well. It's like I had regressed in some way. So it's like I'm seesawing backwards and forwards if I arrange them chronologically. And then we can think, why would I just arrange them chronologically? If I don't believe that time exists, why am I stuck with chronology? It seemed like the calendar chronology is a very poor template for understanding spiritual evolution. So I said, what would happen if I organized these 11 lifetimes according to the progress of the soul into compassion and into alignment with the mission? They'd be out of sequence chronologically, but it would make a lot more sense to me than just following a strict time. So I did that, and I organized them in a certain way. And what I found out for myself, for instance, was that I had a lifetime in the 1700s as a theologian in Germany, where I wasn't a really courageous character. I had big difficulties with the Catholic Church's position on a lot of issues, but I didn't have the courage to stand up and say that. So in some senses, I operated out of a lot of fear. My very next lifetime, I believe, was in the 1300s as a young English mother, gazing ecstatically at the face of her newborn baby and experiencing that kind of, total unconditional love that mothers have for newborns. And so it's like, it was totally out of sequence, but it made a lot more sense to me. So now I got a problem. I have to try to figure out this conundrum, what's true and what's false. So how do I explain this sequence of lifetimes? So the first one, obviously, is to take it chronologically, and I'm seesawing backwards and forwards, making progress, sometimes going backwards other times. And that didn't make a lot of sense to me. So what would happen if time did not exist and the sequence of alignment with love were a better indicator of evolution than simply the chronology? So that was one explanation. And the other explanation was this. I came up with the notion of parallel lifetimes, that I'm actually living all of these lifetimes simultaneously. I'm in the 1700s as a German theologian. I'm a Druid in Ireland, BC. I'm an English mother in the 1300s. I'm living in Italy in the 1600s. I'm a fisherman in the west coast of Ireland in the 1500s. And all of these are playing out simultaneously. I'm a young Russian soldier in the 1940s. All of these are playing out simultaneously. So what would it be if, in some senses, it is a chess match in which we're playing all these roles simultaneously? And in some we're doing really, really well because we've chosen fairly easy circumstances or easy opponents, and we're not making a whole lot of progress, even though it appears that we're doing really well. And there are other places we appear to be losing the matches. Bobby Fischer lost one of the matches. He won 47, drew 2, lost 1. So how is he stretching himself? If you play against really good opponents or really difficult circumstances, you're going to stretch yourself and you're going to grow. It may not feel like that or look like that, but that's what it's actually going to be. You're going to make a lot more progress. Which brings me to 2018, December 2nd, in Palo Alto, California. We look around us and we look at the group that we're with right now. We look at the country in which we find ourselves. We look at the era of human history in which we find ourselves, and we can go in many, many directions. We can curse and say, oh my God, I can't believe I landed in this kind of a situation. Or you could say, you handpicked this time, this family, this nation, this world, because you wanted to grow. You wanted to learn how to love more deeply. You wanted to learn how to forgive. You wanted to learn how to let go of anger, whatever it is that you're working on. You're in exactly the ideal space in this particular lifetime. But you're not just in this lifetime. You're playing many different roles in many different places. So let me use another metaphor to kind of sum that up. Imagine that you're really interested in being an actor. And so you actually join 3 different drama groups. One of them is dedicated to doing Shakespearean stuff. One is dedicated to the dramas of, let's say, Arthur Miller. And the other is dedicated to the works of Samuel Beckett. And so Monday and Tuesday, you train with the Shakespearean group. And Wednesday and Thursday, you're training with the second group. And Friday and Saturday, you're training with the Samuel Beckett group. So you're playing totally different kinds of roles in totally different kinds of dramas with these 3 groups. But you're doing it all simultaneously. And you're learning how to act in each situation. And acting is learning how to love unconditionally in all circumstances. So you're in this one lifetime here. You're sitting in a church in Palo Alto, and it's 20 minutes to 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. And if you look around you, you see people whom you recognize. So why don't you recognize, if you're playing dramas in other places, why don't you recognize it? Because when you're in a Shakespearean drama, you who are part of 3 different groups, as the character, let's say you're playing Macbeth in Macbeth. As Macbeth in Macbeth, you have no idea about Godot with Sam Beckett. As that character in Macbeth. You have no idea whatsoever. As the individual actor, you know you're playing roles in 3 different kinds of dramas, so your soul knows perfectly that you're playing all these parallel lifetimes and the roles you're playing, all of them. But as the individual character within each one, you have no idea. This is the only drama of which you are consciously aware. But as the acting soul knows all these. As the 2 characters in Waiting for Godot, they have no idea that there's a character called, Horatio in a play called Hamlet. No idea whatsoever. So you're totally, confined or identified with this particular role. So you can look around you, and you can look at your family, and you can look at your circumstances and your country and your nation, and it's true. You're playing that role, but you're playing a lot more than that role. You're playing all these other roles as well. And they're cross-fertilizing. The soul is benefiting from all those. But since this is the one of which you're currently aware, because you're now part of this particular drama, how would you play this role of yours right now in your family of origin, among your friends, in California, in the United States of America, on planet Earth, in December the 2nd, 2018, if you knew that you had trained for this, that you had sat with your mentor in heaven, that you and your group had decided what lessons you wanted to learn, through this particular drama, and you parachuted in here, willingly and volunteering to be there. How would you tweak your performance as a result of that? How would you view the world in which you live, the nation of which you are a part, this time in our history? Would you play it with more love or with less love? And when you finally step outside of time again and you review how you played this particular drama, will you be kicking yourself that you forgot why you came? Or will you be really, really happy that you remembered while you were still alive that you're a bite-sized piece of God who volunteered for incarnation?